So this process, I'm going to show you how to create these from scratch, because if you know what you're trying to create, you don't have to do that convert step. You can, instead of creating a motion project, if you know you're trying to create a transition, which is what we're going to do here, you can select Final Cut Transition right from the start. And what that'll do is give you all of the components that are needed to make this transition work inside of Final Cut Pro 10. For a transition, you need these A and B points here, because you need the incoming clip, and then some transition happens, and then you end up with your outgoing clip, which in this case is this red clip. So we're going from green to red. So if I want to create some kind of a transition here, we could put all kinds of animation and other things onto our clips to make that happen. I'm just going to do a slide just from scratch using a line here. So I'll go get my line tool again. Just going to drag that line across the page. With the line selected, I can go and get my properties to move this around, and we'll just have this go from top down. So my line's up at the top. I'm going to go to the beginning of my transition, add a keyframe, go to the end of my transition, and drag that line all the way down. And there's already a transition like this inside of Final Cut, but I want this to create this just so you can see how this animates. Now you'll notice here the line I created, and it starts right here. So on the timeline, I'm going to extend that line so it goes to the beginning of the project. Now we should see that animating all the way down. And then I'm going to change the crop for my transition A so that as the line is going down, the crop will follow that line. And then as it's cropped, we'll start to see the transition B part. And again, if this is confusing, I'm going kind of quickly through this part because this is not designed to be a lesson in the motion stuff here. This is more on the interactions and how this works with Final Cut. So to do this, I'm going to animate my crop on my transition here. And we'll just be cropping down from the top spot there, and so that you can see that second clip. So I'm going to add a keyframe to the top. We'll go over here to the end, and we'll crop it all the way down. I can go in the middle here and see how it's following it. Just want to make sure it's following that line. So I might add a couple extra keyframes here. But it's roughly on this line. Not going to be too precise here, but you get the idea, right? So it's gone from the first clip to the second clip now. Pretty good. I'm happy with it for now. We can always come back and make more changes in the future. I'm going to hit Command S, and just like we saw with the title, we have to create a template and a category. We have to send all these over. So this is just a top-down transition. So I'll call it that. My category, I'm going to create a new category just like before. And don't want to do that. So that just makes that window huge. So yeah, I'll do the Final Cut Pro Help as the category. And let's create a theme here just so you can see this. I'll just call this wipes. And I'll hit create. And yeah, so I have that information entered in there, and I'll hit publish. These things are very, very quick, so they tend to publish pretty quickly. Like that's already done. And I'm happy with it. We'll do Command Q, quit out of motion, Command Space to get back into Final Cut. But yeah, if you notice, I mean, there's nothing else. Really just Command S to save that title there. And same thing there with the transition. We do Command Space. So I'm going to do Command minus here a couple times on the timeline. I'm going to get a second clip that we can transition into. And let's do, that one's pretty outdoorsy and green. I'll try to get something that is different. We'll get this squinty dog picture here. And then let's go into our transition browser over here on the right side. You'll notice we have a new category on the left column called Final Cut Pro Help. This was the category that we selected when we saved it. And there's the top-down transition. I can swipe across it to see a preview, which is pretty straightforward, right? And this is the theme. Notice it's under this wipes category. That's what the theme is. So when you're browsing transitions, I don't know if we have any with these. Yeah, with the pre-built ones, I think just Stylized has them. But this boxes, bulletin board, cinema, these are the themes. So the theme essentially just lets you break up your transition browser to make it a little bit easier to find things or organize stuff. But yeah, then if I drag that transition there onto our clip here, and I'm just going to use the arrow to swipe through it, we can see that transition happening. I can do I and O to set a range here and play back that range just so you can see that transition happening. Right, so very, very straightforward. There's nothing too exciting about this transition, but you can see how we got it from Motion and published it so that it made it available inside of Final Cut Pro. And what's really great about these transitions and titles is you can right click or control click on these, even the ones that are built in, and there's an option to open it in Motion. So you can say open in Motion from Final Cut. In the background, it's opening up Motion. It's going to launch it with that project. You can make changes, customize it, maybe publish additional parameters that you want available, and then save it and it'll be ready to go. So in this case, if I wanted to change the line, maybe I didn't like how the line looked, I can go and let's make it much thicker, and I'm going to change the color of it just so it's really obvious that it's changed. But I changed the transition. I can do Command S to save it, Command Tab to switch back to Final Cut. And looking in my transition browser, you can see it hasn't updated it just yet here. Sometimes switching out and back does. You can see the preview icon's updated there, but it hasn't updated a little preview movie. But let's delete this transition, and we'll go in and add the new one. And notice now we have our blue line transitioning down to swipe and change between those two clips. All right, so I hope that answered the question of how you can get both transitions and then also titles that you've created inside of Motion and make them available inside of Final Cut Pro 10. If you don't have Motion, if you haven't purchased